Here I have a sample news article that I've put together for this demonstration of how to insert quotations, which are people talking, into a news article to make it a stronger news article. So you see here, I've got my news article, and it's got its headline, it has who wrote it, the date, the location. It's all made up. This is all made up stuff. And I've got my lead here, and then I've got some general information and a concluding section in this news article. And one of the things that can really strengthen a news article is having quotations, which are people talking. So up here, I've got two people who are talking, and they've got things to say in the news article. And so I've got Michael Smith and Susan Jones. So let's start with Michael Smith's quote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down his quote. And one of the common mistakes that I see in the news articles is people will go like this. We've got, the lead here, and at the end of the lead, they're going to just drop Michael's quote in, and they go, said Michael Smith. But this isn't really the way to do it, because whenever a new person is talking, they're going to be in a new paragraph like this. And then in this case, so he talks. At the end of him being done talking, I'm going to have a comma and then said Michael Smith, period. So this is all one person talking, and when he's finished talking, it's not the end of the sentence. It goes comma, quote, said Michael Smith, period. And how do you know where to place the commas and the quotes? The truth of the matter is, it's just something that we learn and practice. So in this case, comma, quote, said Michael Smith, period. Now, the other problem I sometimes see is that, I don't know who Michael Smith is. The reader who's going through this, they don't know who Michael Smith is. So I need to add a little bit here. I'm going to do an add-on. So comma, so it says, said Michael Smith. And who is he? Director of Programming for the Apex Central School Board. And, as I get this corrected up, now the reader knows who Michael is. He is the Director of Programming for the Apex Central School Board. So here I have Michael's quotation. The other way of doing this that is really nice is I might choose to split this quote up to make it so that Michael gets introduced a little bit earlier. And so the way I might do that is I take this section here, and I'm going to actually end the quote with it, so period quote. So this is going to be the end of this section. But up here, after the first sentence, I'm going to, instead of ending with a period, I'll put a comma, I'll end the quote, and then said Michael Smith, Director of Programming for the Apex Central School Board, and then quote. I'm going to resume the quote. So what we end up with is a split quote. I have two sections here where Michael is talking, and it gets broken up when we explain who he is and what he does. So this is a really nice way a really professional way of breaking up a quote. The other thing I like to do in a news article is I like to do I like to at least have two quotes. And sometimes what I see people do, so I have this quote up here from Susan Jones, and she says, I agree with Michael. I'm actually going to leave that part out. It's not really connected in the article. I'm going to take what she actually said here. And what some people end up doing is they just go quote after quote. So then they come in here and they do quote, it's great to have so many people working towards their courses with me at the school, comma, quote, said Susan Jones, comma, teacher at St. George High School. But the problem with this is we have two quotes in a row. Now the reader's going to know these are two different people because the quotes are in different paragraphs. But what we normally like to do in a news article is put the quotations separated by a little bit of explanation. So I'm going to bring Susan's quote down here into the bottom. So here we see the quote separated by some explanation. Now, the other thing I can do is if Susan Jones had been introduced earlier. So let's say the school is running 3 classes. Susan Jones teaches English, science, and math with about 20 students in each class. So, she's very busy. She's teaching 3 courses at that school. But since she's been introduced that she's a teacher, and I might say, they're running during the school. We said it's at St. George's High School, and that it's Susan Jones who's teaching the courses. When I have her quotation, it's great to see so many people working towards completing their courses with me at the school. I can just say, said Jones, period. Because I already introduced her. And the second time she's mentioned, a second time a person is mentioned, we only need to use their last name. Unless there's 2 people in the article with the same last name, which is pretty rare. So, in this way, I can just say, said Jones. So again, the most important things here is to note where to place the comma. The comma is placed inside the quotation. Every quotation has to have quotation marks on both sides of it so that it's contained. And when you have explaining who's talking, again, it goes comma, quote, said Jones, period. Likewise, up here, we said, comma, quote, said Michael Smith, comma, and then we said what he does, and then we had the period. So here we have a split quote, and here we have kind of a regular quote. So hopefully that's helpful as you are assembling your quotations for your news articles.